Welcome to That's So Rad podcast. I'm your host, Travis Vonksness. This is a podcast about people, their passions, their life experiences, and their stories. As writer Frederick Buechner once said, the story of any one of us is in some measure the story of us all. All of us can learn something valuable from someone else's life and their stories. Join us for another conversation where we learn, laugh, and leave, seeing our own life in new ways. What's more rad than that? Hey, welcome to another episode of That's So Rad podcast. I'm your host, Travis, and this one's going to be different. Flying solo for a solo cast today for a little bit. Going to be short. It's weird doing a podcast by yourself. It's like standing in the bathroom mirror and talking to yourself and then sharing it with a bunch of people. Yeah, I just wanted to check in, kind of do an intermission and reflect a little bit on the podcast so far. I've had 14 guests and 14 episodes, posting every other week, which has been a good rhythm. Really appreciate good feedback and people have reached out on it. Really appreciate also if you have enjoyed the podcast, if you'd leave a review on Apple. And yeah, just share it with others and with friends. It is a different type of a podcast, in that it's not as much. Some podcasts are really about certain content that is then driven more by the content and then matching up guests. And a lot of times you have, influential guests in that space or whatever. I love the idea of, when I say quote unquote ordinary, we're all ordinary, but just people that I know and have been inspired by, or just think that they would have some really cool stuff to share about their life, about what they're doing, and kind of just see how that resonates with others. And I think that's what I set out to do in the podcast. I just thought it'd be cool to, like I said, bring people on that I personally know, or even kind of I've lost touch with, but there's still something there that I'd love to have a conversation on, and so that's been cool. And so just thinking about some of the highlights so far. My last two kids that haven't been on a podcast yet have been elusive. Jesse and I, my wife, have another podcast called Cultivate the Ordinary, which we haven't really done much with since like the summer, but that's one to check out as well. So go check that one out. That podcast is about just sharing stories of and thoughts around like the ordinary spaces that God's showing up, or that people are doing inspiring things. So it's sort of peripheral to this podcast in a way, but that one's more faith centric and focused. This rad podcast certainly incorporates faith in people's lives, but I would just say it's a lot more broad and general. But anyway, so I had two of my kids. Dre hopped on a podcast as part of a birth or a Father's Day gift for me, he said. And that was cool. He hopped on and we talked about him being in foster care and then being adopted in a transracial family, and what that journey's been like. And really cool to hear, just your kids share what they've learned in life and how fast they're growing up. Then had my daughter Joey on, being the only girl with 4 brothers and how that's impacted her, forged in the fire. And so had a lot of fun on that. So getting to have 2 of the kids that have never been on a podcast in our family on has been fun so far. Another highlight, And this is one that was really fascinating, is to, I don't know, it just hit me when I was launching this thing of like, I thought back to, um, well, one was just thinking back to a classmate of mine that I hadn't seen um, since graduation day, May of '98. And, but, we've kind of loosely kept up on social media and messages and stuff like that. And, um, but always was still to this day one of the funniest people I've ever known and met, and just kind of thought like, man, what would it be like to catch up with him, but also then do a podcast and just kind of share it, you know. And it was a huge hit. It was a huge hit with other classmates and people where we grew up in a small town in North Dakota, but also just like, it was super fun. It was just super fun to kind of go back down memory lane, just kind of pick up, same sense of humor from Brett. And so it really had me laughing so much in that. And it was just really awesome. And so, yeah, Brett Henry kicked off the first episode out of the gates. And I think that kind of sparked something of like, hey, this is really cool, of like, you know, like I haven't kept up much with other classmates I graduated with, but we came from a small town in North Dakota and a small graduating class. And I think there's something cool in middle age as I don't know, I felt like I'm drawn back home, back in a lot of reflections about where I came from, the things that shaped me in a state I'm really proud I grew up in. Um, the work ethic, the land, being on the farm, um, the sort of tough features of that place that really did form us. And so anyway, it's been super cool to go back. And so, yeah, that wasn't planned. But after that great episode, to kick this thing off, yeah, I just thought about some other people that came to mind and did another one with Tom, and had a lot of fun on that. Again, memory lane, playing football together, track, some of the sports stuff. And from there, another classmate came to mind and another one. And so anyway, I'm probably not going to have a pipeline of too many more in that camp, but super fun. Props have been huge. Another highlight on this podcast. So I've kind of definitely highlighted YouTube on this thing. So obviously it's on Apple and Spotify, but so much of this has also been visual. And then I think then too, having classmates on where people are like, oh, I just want to see you guys, and how bad you look 30 years later or whatever. And so, but anyway, that's kind of been fun, where people sort of picked up this thing of being on and coming on with a prop, something fun to share. And that's kind of, I think, been present about every episode. Talked about beards a lot for the dudes. That's kind of been a thing. But I guess staying true to one of the things that's happened with props, I thought I better bring a prop to this one. So had to bring on the old Reebok pump. This was a retro. But yeah, if you grew up in the 80s, 90s, you remember when, I think in 1989, when these hit the center stage, D Brown and the inflating it before the dunk contest in like 90, 91, iconic sports moment. And then Shaq bringing on the pumps after that. So anyway, just, yeah, fun shoe. And, I had to bring that prop on today. So looking back, I also have another shoe story. There was a couple of shoe stories. There was a time where I was living in Indiana at the time, after college, just kind of, I don't know, wandering a bit aimlessly, not putting my history degree to use, and did full-time eBay. Full-time. Paid the rent at an apartment, just finding used shoes and selling them on eBay. And there's a huge collector market for Nikes. and crazy, crazy stuff. I mean, Jordans were huge too. So like if you could find used Jordans, vintage Jordans, you might buy them at Goodwill for $8 and, flip them for 150 plus. I remember finding I guess it was a rare, I don't know, it was a 90s basketball shoe or something that kind of was more rare. Again, barely paid anything for it. Um, and man, I want to say sold for like $300. Um, but yeah, it was crazy. Scrubbing shoes, listing shoes on eBay and making a living without kids and stuff. But, and one other thing, never forget this. I was at a farmer's, no, it was a outdoor market in Indiana one time. And there was, you see everything at these things. And there was a shoe there with a knockoff Nike swoosh. And then on the back of the shoe, it was clearly an M, Mikey. Mikey. No shame at all. Hilarious. So yeah, but that was a meandering thing, which I'm trying to stay true to where the podcast goes. So even talking to myself here in a mono solo podcast, still gonna have rabbit trails. So anyway, speaking of that, this wasn't on my bingo card in 2025, but had a classmate on, Tom Heilman, and again, fun to reminisce, go back in time on old memories and sports. And before that episode, Tom said he had a prop to bring on. It was going to be a surprise. And I don't think a lot of people that knew us, knew him, knew much about it, or it's kind of sat in this dusty, I don't know if it's in a garage or whatever. So he brings this thing out, and it is I don't know, but it looked to me on the screen like a 3 foot plus diameter athletic tape roll from our track days in the late 90s at high school meets, where have our team and other teams go collect tape. And he says it was new, but anyway, it was crazy, just crazy visually, and just it was kind of this cool kind of I don't know, like an interesting place in time where you preceding all the smartphones and kind of just the screens that, I guess years later, high schoolers would have had in their hands, to where it almost seemed like a bygone era, where because at meets like that, where you just didn't have all that stuff, like the distractions like that, it was like you were more present to just being creative and goofing off and stuff like that. So I think there was a really cool that, this thing was made with other teams and with, kind of this goal in mind. And I mean, and it's crazy what it's done. As of right now, I think we're at over 1.5 million views on Instagram. It was liked by the official Instagram account of NCAA track and field, which is unbelievable. And then it's not like I have a following on Instagram. I'm like under 300 followers. So for that thing to go viral was just crazy. So yeah, that was an unexpected turn on this podcast and a that's so rad moment. Also not on my bingo card was previous episode of this one, hopping on another podcast with a high school classmate and donning a class t-shirt from our senior year that was 27 years old. Super funny to like see Rachel on with her pristine white one. Mine is like super yellow, which probably speaks to the difference on male hygiene, especially, or at least my hygiene, or bad hygiene back then. So there's that. What else as I think about some things? The content generation is another cool thing. So one of my favorite things, I guess, probably unintentional, but also realizing like this is maybe worth or as good as, or maybe even more value than the podcast itself, is the, kind of ability to create standalone real content. Whether it's something funny, inspiring, a life lesson, um, obviously that athletic tape roll, went viral. And so, but the ability to just sort of create content that you mine out of an episode and then share on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, how that thing becomes a much bigger audience. I mean, you can have, even on like something that doesn't get huge, it could still get 1,000 views on Instagram or something like that. And the reach that has on a particular message or soundbite or whatever is awesome. I mean, it's like you just never know how certain things are going to land or what's going to happen. I've had, uh, one of my favorite moments was having a friend reach out about a clip that, one of the guests shared that was about, just fighting through adversity. And a friend of mine reached out and just said how helpful that was. And that was just that clip. I mean, there's a lot of people that won't listen to, the whole podcast, but the ability to kind of create content from these podcasts in small bite-sized clips that on their own stand up as being, again, funny, helpful, inspiring, thought-provoking, challenging, super cool. On that front too, even had another clip that it wasn't that it went viral, but it had a pretty good amount of views on Instagram, I think. And I noticed that one of the likes was from a starting lineman from the Indianapolis Colts player. So it's just like, you just don't know, the impact that whatever bit of content you share is where it's going to go. It's just unleashing the world and just crazy. So that was cool. Yeah, winding this down just with some other reflections as I think about where we've gone so far. It's been interesting how much I've realized the story of my brother Jeremy has kind of taken center stage in some conversations, or has definitely popped up. Um, I guess interesting to see how near that is to the surface of my life, I guess. Um, it is the most inspiring person I know, the most courageous, the most heroic, to be in a wheelchair and a bed and tube fed since 2009. A car accident stripped his life completely bare. Being a college athlete, all that, can't speak now, but can spell. But just, yeah, just I guess how much in our conversations he comes to mind and things. And so getting to share more about him and his life through these episodes has been really cool. I think it's two of my guests. Both were classmates. Lost their dad in the last couple of years, and I lost my dad about 3 years ago. So, um, didn't even know that until connecting and talking, and yeah, just how much that's been cool to share about how we processed grief, the solidarity of suffering, loss, um, coping with grief, things like that. But yeah, just hearing, and it's our dads, so three of us talking about our dads that we've recently lost. So didn't know that would be coming down the pike, when this thing kicked off. Uh, Humor, humor is so much about what I'm about in life. It's a staple of this podcast. Um, Someone once said that I think laughter is the shortest distance between two people. Such a connector through that, and it's universal. Like we all need to laugh. We need to laugh more. Life is tough. Um, there's so much disconnection these days with just whether it's politically or just, I don't know. I think we're all feeling the weight of so much hardship and just anxiety and stuff like that. So humor is such a cool uh, space to I don't know, cope with life and kind of reframe things and stuff like that. So that's been super rad. And then I just close with just, I think what I've loved is hearing the diversity of answers on what keeps people inspired. It's so cool to, one of the themes has been I'm in middle aged, 46. And so definitely at that age of kind of just thinking about like, the question of what is keeping us going? What keeps you going? What keeps you, inspired through your day to day? And that's been a fun question to ask. And then hear the diversity of answers and really be also encouraged by that. I've, some of the guests and their answers have really inspired me to think about looking at life through that lens more or whatever. And that's ultimately, I think, what I'm most proud of with this podcast is just that it's a way to bring a diversity of guests onto the podcast. And it's more than a certain theme or a topic of this podcast where you're the expert or whatever. It's more of your life is your life is the guest. And the inspiration, the life within your life that can inspire the whatever it is. But it's just, I think that's kind of been my favorite thing is just the way people have shown up and what they've shared, being honest and real, raw. Had a previous episode where one of the guests talked about his addiction journey, and just the things that people have had to overcome. So super stoked about continuing on and looking forward to some more great guests, friends, other people to connect with on this and share some cool stories and keep inspiring each other. So super grateful for those of you guys that have watched, listened, supported this podcast. Some of these have been pretty long, so getting through some of that's been probably a multi-day deal if you're into it. But super grateful for you. And like I said before, love to have you reach out and share feedback about it or any thoughts. And again, grateful for you to listen and watch and keep hanging out with me. And let's continue to have a rad time together. Hope you enjoyed the episode today. Check out the show notes for any links or resources shared in the episode. If you enjoy the podcast, it would be really appreciated if you'd subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share it with friends. May we all remember these words from writer Mary Oliver. Instructions for living a life. Pay attention, be astonished, tell about it.